Welcome, Spicy Lady. A wise mind does not ask how can I outsmart everyone. It asks how can I stop fooling myself. When people hear the word intelligence, they usually think about high grades, quick answers, or having an impressive amount of knowledge. But there is another kind of intelligence that is much rarer and far more powerful. It has nothing to do with showing off what you know. It is the ability to examine your own thinking before it quietly shapes your decisions. This is called metacognitive intelligence, and it changes the way a person experiences life. Some Spicy Lady Sigma naturally develop this ability through years of reflection, difficult experiences, and an honest willingness to question themselves. They do not just pay attention to what is happening around them. They pay attention to what is happening inside their own minds. They notice hidden assumptions, challenge old beliefs, and refuse to let emotions or habits make important decisions without careful thought. I end this video. We are going beyond the usual personality traits and exploring a level of self-awareness that very few people ever reach. These signs are subtle, yet they reveal a mind that is constantly learning, adapting, and growing from the inside out. Stay with us until the very end, because every sign adds another piece to the bigger picture. And together, they reveal why this is one of the rarest forms of intelligence. We would also love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment below, share this video with someone who would enjoy it, and subscribe to join our growing community. Thank you for your continued support. Now, let's get started, Spicy Lady. Number 1, they can hold two opposite ideas without panicking. They understand that reality is rarely simple. One of the clear signs of high metacognitive intelligence is the ability to sit with two opposite ideas without rushing to pick a side. Most people feel uncomfortable when life refuses to give them a simple answer. They want everything to be either right or wrong, good or bad, friends or enemies. But a Spicy Lady Sigma understands that real life is rarely that neat. She knows that two things can be true at the same time, that a person can genuinely care about you and still disappoint you. A difficult decision can feel painful and still be the right choice. A failure can damage your confidence while also teaching you lessons that success never could. Instead of becoming frustrated by these contradictions, she becomes curious. She asks questions instead of jumping to conclusions. For example, imagine someone loses a job they loved. Most people immediately call it bad luck. A Spicy Lady Sigma may see the disappointment, but she also sees the possibility that it could lead to a healthier career, a better environment, or even a completely different path that would never have been discovered otherwise. She does not deny the pain. She simply refuses to believe that pain tells the whole story. This way of thinking also changes how she sees people. If someone makes a mistake, she does not immediately label them as a terrible person. She understands that good people sometimes make poor decisions and that kind people can carry deep emotional wounds that affect how they behave. That does not mean she excuses harmful actions. It means she looks beyond the surface before deciding what something truly means. This mindset protects her from becoming trapped by black and white thinking, which is responsible for many broken relationships, poor decisions, and unnecessary arguments. While others are busy choosing sides, she is busy understanding the bigger picture. The truth is, the smartest people are not the ones who always have quick answers. They are the ones who can live with uncertainty long enough to discover better ones. That takes patience, emotional maturity, and a level of self-awareness that very few people ever develop. It is not about avoiding difficult truths. It is about respecting the complexity of life instead of forcing everything into simple categories that were never designed to hold it. Number 2, they realize that their greatest opponent is yesterday's mind. The highest form of intelligence isn't defeating other people. One of the strongest signs of high metacognitive intelligence is realizing that your biggest challenge is rarely another person. It is often the version of yourself that refuses to grow. A Spicy Lady Sigma understands that the mindset which helped her survive one stage of life may quietly hold her back in the next. She knows that growth is not just about learning something new. It is also about letting go of ways of thinking that no longer serve her. Many people spend years trying to prove they are smarter than everyone around them. They compare achievements, argue over opinions, and compete for recognition. A spicy Lady Sigma is usually asking a different question. She wonders, am I still looking at life the same way I did 5 years ago? If the answer is yes, she knows something is wrong. A healthy mind should keep evolving. Think about someone who grew up believing that asking for help was a sign of weakness. Maybe that belief protected them during difficult times because they had no one to rely on. But years later, that same belief can damage relationships, increase stress, and stop them from reaching their full potential. What once helped them survive now prevents them from thriving. A spicy Lady Sigma pays attention to these hidden mental habits. She does not automatically defend every belief she has held for years. Instead, she asks herself difficult questions. Does this way of thinking still fit the person I am becoming? That question alone can change the direction of an entire life. She also understands that experience does not always equal wisdom. Some people repeat the same year of thinking over and over while believing they have gained decades of experience. Time changes nothing if the mind never changes with it. This is why she spends more time upgrading her perspective than protecting her pride. She knows that every new chapter of life demands a different level of thinking. The mindset that built a career may not build a healthy family. The mindset that helped heal after heartbreak may not be the one that allows love back in. Every season asks different questions. That is the rarest kind of intelligence. It is not the ability to outsmart other people. It is the courage to outgrow your own outdated thinking before it quietly becomes the biggest obstacle to the life you are trying to build. Number 3, they catch their own lies before anyone else does. Most people become victims of the stories they tell themselves. One of the rare signs of high metacognitive intelligence is the ability to catch your own lies before anyone else does. These are not the obvious lies people tell others. They are the quiet stories people tell themselves every single day. Those stories often sound reasonable, but they slowly shape how a person sees the world without them even noticing. A spicy Lady Sigma has a habit of stopping and asking herself uncomfortable questions. Am I really telling myself the truth? Or am I just protecting my feelings? That question alone separates her from most people. She knows the human mind is incredibly good at making excuses that sound logical. Sometimes what looks like confidence is actually fear. Sometimes what feels like loyalty is simply an unwillingness to let go. Sometimes calling someone toxic is easier than admitting they simply outgrew the relationship. For example, imagine someone saying, I never got promoted because my boss was unfair. That may be true, but a spicy Lady Sigma will also ask, was there anything I could have done better? Did I improve my skills enough? Did I communicate my value clearly? She does not ask these questions to blame herself. She asks because she knows growth begins where excuses end. She also catches herself when she starts creating stories without evidence. If a friend takes longer than usual to reply, she does not immediately assume they are angry or losing interest. She understands that the mind loves filling empty spaces with imaginary explanations, and those explanations are often wrong. This habit keeps her grounded in reality instead of emotion. She would rather face a painful truth than spend years living inside a comfortable illusion. That is not always easy because the truth can bruise the ego. It can expose pride, fear, insecurity, or bad habits that have gone unnoticed for years. But she knows those discoveries are not failures. They are opportunities to become wiser. In the end, she understands that the most dangerous deception is not being fooled by other people. It is being fooled by yourself. The person who can question their own beliefs with honesty has a level of mental freedom that very few people ever experience. That is why her greatest conversations are often the quiet ones she has with her own mind, where pride steps aside and truth is finally allowed to speak. Number 4, she detects the thought behind the thought. She doesn't stop at I want this. She asks, why do I want this? One of the most fascinating signs of high metacognitive intelligence is the ability to notice the thought behind the thought. Most people stop at the surface. They say, I want this job. I want this relationship. Or I want this lifestyle. And never ask another question. The spicy Lady Sigma is different. She becomes curious about the reason behind the desire itself. She wants to know where it came from and whether it truly belongs to her. She quietly asks herself, why do I want this so badly? Is this something I genuinely value, or is it something I've been taught to admire? Would I still want it if nobody else could see it? Those questions may sound simple, but they uncover truths that many people spend a lifetime avoiding. Take success as an example. Many people chase a bigger house, a higher paying job, or a certain social image because they believe those things automatically mean they have made it. A spicy Lady Sigma pauses before joining that race. She asks herself whether those goals match her own values or whether they were handed to her by family, society, or social media. Sometimes she discovers that what she truly wants is not more money, but more freedom, not more attention, but more peace. That realization can completely change the direction of her life. She knows the mind works like hidden software that if you never examine the program, it quietly runs your decisions without your permission. You may think you are making choices freely while in reality you are simply following old beliefs, childhood experiences, or other people's expectations. This habit also protects her from emotional decisions. If she suddenly feels jealous, angry, or deeply offended, she does not only react to the emotion. She asks what thought created it in the first place. Often she discovers that the real issue is an old fear, an unmet expectation, or an assumption that may not even be true. That is rare wisdom. She understands that changing a decision is helpful, but changing the thinking that created the decision is life-changing. While most people spend years trying to fix the results, she goes straight to the source. She knows that once the mind becomes clear, better choices begin to happen naturally. Number 5, they study their mistakes long after everyone else has forgotten them. Not to feel guilty, but because mistakes reveal thinking patterns that success hides. One of the clear signs of high metacognitive intelligence is that a spicy Lady Sigma does not rush to forget her mistakes. Most people want to move on as quickly as possible. They bury the memory, make excuses, or pretend it never happened because it is uncomfortable to look back. A spicy Lady Sigma does the opposite. She revisits her mistakes, not to punish herself, but to understand them. She knows that every mistake leaves behind valuable information. It tells a story about how she was thinking at that moment. Was she too impatient? Did she ignore her instincts? Did she assume something without checking the facts? Was she chasing comfort instead of making the right decision? These are the questions that matter to her. Think about someone who trusted the wrong friend and ended up deeply hurt. Many people walk away saying, people cannot be trusted, and carry that belief for years. A spicy Lady Sigma asks a different question. She wonders, what signs did I ignore? Why did I explain away behavior that made me uncomfortable? What was I hoping to see instead of what was actually there? Those answers are far more valuable than simply blaming the other person. She understands that success can be misleading. When things go well, people often assume every decision they made was brilliant, but success sometimes comes from luck, timing, or circumstances beyond their control. Failure is different. Failure shines a light on weaknesses that success often keeps hidden. It exposes habits, assumptions, and emotional reactions that need attention. That is why she treats failure like psychological data instead of emotional baggage. She studies it the way a detective studies clues. Every disappointment becomes a lesson about how her mind works under pressure. Every wrong decision becomes a chance to improve the next one. This does not mean she lives in the past. There is a big difference between reflection and regret. Regret keeps a person trapped. Reflection sets a person free. One keeps asking, why did this happen to me? The other asks, what can this teach me? That simple shift changes everything. While others are busy escaping their mistakes, she is quietly learning from them. Over time, those lessons become wisdom. The mistake fades, the embarrassment disappears, but the understanding remains. That is why the same problem rarely defeats her twice. She does not waste pain. She turns it into insight, and insight becomes one of her greatest strengths. Number 6, they quietly notice the difference between knowledge and mental freedom. Knowing thousands of facts means little if your thinking is still controlled by fear, pride, insecurity, or social pressure. One of the most overlooked signs of high metacognitive intelligence is that a spicy Lady Sigma clearly understands the difference between having knowledge and having mental freedom. Many people confuse the two, But they are not the same that a person can read hundreds of books, earn impressive degrees, and remember endless facts, yet still allow fear, pride, insecurity, or the opinions of others to control every important decision. To her, that is not real intelligence. That is simply having a well-toned memory. She has met people who can speak beautifully about confidence, but are terrified of making one unpopular decision. She has seen people who give excellent advice to others, but cannot follow that same advice when emotions take over. Those experiences taught her that information alone does not change a person. The mind can be full of knowledge and still be trapped by invisible chains. That is why she pays close attention to the freedom of her own thinking. Whenever she feels strongly about something, she quietly asks herself, is this what I truly believe? Or am I afraid of what people will think if I choose differently? That question helps her separate genuine conviction from hidden pressure. Take career choices as an example. Many people spend years chasing jobs they never wanted because they were taught that success only looks one way. They follow the crowd without ever asking whether that path matches the life they actually want. A spicy Lady Sigma is willing to pause and question those expectations. She would rather build a life that fits her values than spend years living someone else's definition of success. She also understands that pride can quietly imprison the mind. Some people refuse to admit they were wrong, not because the evidence is weak, but because their identity depends on always being right. She sees that as a loss of freedom. If your ego decides what you're allowed to believe, then your thinking is no longer your own. This is why she measures intelligence differently. She is not impressed by how much someone knows until she sees how they think. Can they change their opinion when new evidence appears? Can they admit uncertainty? Can they resist following the crowd simply because everyone else is going in the same direction? To her, real intelligence is not a contest of facts. It is the quiet ability to think with honesty, question without fear, and choose with clarity. That a free mind is far more powerful than a full mind because knowledge fills the memory. But mental freedom shapes the entire course of a person's life. Number 7, they frequently change questions instead of chasing better answers. Average minds search harder. Metacognitive minds search smarter. One of the rare signs of high metacognitive intelligence is that a spicy Lady Sigma knows that asking better questions is often more valuable than finding faster answers. Most people spend their lives trying harder to solve a problem, but they never stop to ask if they are solving the right problem in the first place. That is where she thinks differently. When something is not working, the average person usually asks, how do I fix this? A spicy Lady Sigma often pauses and asks, am I even asking the right question? That small shift can completely change the outcome. For example, imagine someone keeps asking, how can I make people like me? They may spend years changing their personality, trying to impress others, or worrying about every conversation. A spicy Lady Sigma steps back and changes the question. Instead, she asks, why do I need everyone to like me? Suddenly, the problem is no longer about other people. It is about understanding herself. That single question leads to a much deeper answer. The same thing happens after failure. Most people ask, why did this happen to me? She asks, what was I assuming that turned out to be wrong? Instead of looking for someone to blame, she looks for the belief that misled her. She knows that changing one false assumption can solve problems that endless effort never could. She also understands that life often gives confusing answers because people ask shallow questions. If someone constantly asks, how do I become successful? They may receive thousands of different opinions. But if they ask, what does success actually mean to me? The answer becomes personal, clear, and far more useful. This habit keeps her from wasting years chasing solutions that were never designed for her real problem. She knows that a wrong question can produce 100 useless answers, while the right question can unlock a truth that changes everything. That is why she is never in a hurry to answer. She is more interested in improving the quality of the question. She has learned that wisdom is not always about knowing more. Sometimes it is about seeing the problem from a completely different angle. The moment the question changes, the mind changes. When the mind changes, decisions become clearer relationships become healthier, and life begins to make more sense. That is the quiet power of metacognitive intelligence. Number 8, they regularly examine the person doing the thinking. Most people analyze situations. Spicy Lady Sigma analyze the observer. They ask, what experiences, fears, or desires are shaping the way I'm interpreting this? One of the rare signs of high metacognitive intelligence is that a spicy Lady Sigma does not only examine what she is thinking, she examines the person doing the thinking. That may sound strange at first, but it is one of the deepest forms of self-awareness a person can develop. Most people spend their time analyzing situations. They ask what happened, who was right, or who was wrong. A spicy Lady Sigma asks a different question before answering any of those. She quietly wonders, why am I seeing this situation the way I am? She knows that two people can witness the exact same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. The event is the same, but the minds interpreting it are different. She understands that every experience leaves fingerprints on the way a person thinks. Childhood memories, painful disappointments, happy moments, fears, and even old successes can quietly influence how the brain interprets new situations. If those influences remain unnoticed, they begin making decisions on her behalf. For example, if someone ignored her trust years ago, she knows she might become overly suspicious of people who have done nothing wrong. Instead of assuming her first reaction is correct, she pauses and asks herself, am I responding to this person, or am I responding to an old experience that still lives in my mind? That one question can prevent misunderstandings that destroy relationships. The same thing happens with success. If she receives praise, she does not immediately believe she has become an expert at everything. She asks whether confidence is helping her think clearly or making her overlook important details. She understands that pride can distort judgment just as easily as fear can. This habit gives her something many people never achieve. It gives her distance from her own thoughts. She realizes that every thought deserves attention, but not every thought deserves belief. Some thoughts come from wisdom. Others come from insecurity, habit, exhaustion, or old emotional wounds. Learning the difference is life-changing. That is why she rarely rushes to conclusions. She knows the observer is never completely neutral. The mind is always carrying yesterday into today. That be why examining herself before judging the world, she sees situations with greater clarity and fairness. In the end, she realizes that changing the way she sees herself often changes the way she sees everything else. That is the quiet power of true metacognitive intelligence. Number 9, they rarely trust their first interpretation of reality. They understand that first impressions are often emotional shortcuts. Instead of asking what happened, they ask, what am I missing? One of the strongest signs of high metacognitive intelligence is that a spicy Lady Sigma rarely trusts her first interpretation of reality. She knows the human mind loves quick answers. The brain is designed to fill in gaps, make fast judgments, and create stories before all the facts are available. While this may save time, it also creates misunderstandings, poor decisions, and unnecessary conflict. That is why she has developed a simple but powerful habit. Instead of immediately asking, what happened, she quietly asks, what am I missing? That one question changes everything. Imagine a coworker walks past her without saying hello. Many people instantly assume they are being ignored, disrespected, or disliked. Within minutes, they have built an entire story in their minds. A spicy Lady Sigma pauses before accepting that story. She considers other possibilities. Maybe the person is distracted. Maybe they received bad news. Maybe they simply did not notice her. She understands that the first explanation is not always the most accurate one, that the same thing happens in relationships. If someone sends a short message, many people immediately believe something is wrong. They begin overthinking every word and creating problems that do not exist. A spicy Lady Sigma reminds herself that the mind often fills empty spaces with fear rather than facts. Instead of reacting, she waits until she has enough information to understand the situation clearly. She has learned through experience that emotions often speak first while wisdom arrives later. Anger, excitement, disappointment, and fear all have a way of convincing people that their first impression is the truth. But she knows emotions are excellent messengers and very poor judges. They deserve attention, but they should not always make the final decision. This habit protects her from becoming trapped by assumptions. She knows that many arguments begin because people react to the story they created instead of the reality they are actually living. By slowing down and asking better questions, she avoids countless unnecessary mistakes. Over time, this way of thinking gives her a clearer view of people and life. She understands that reality is usually more complex than it first appears. The obvious answer is not always the correct one, and the loudest emotion is not always the most reliable guide. That is why she values curiosity over certainty. She would rather spend a little more time discovering the truth than rush into a conclusion she may later regret. That quiet patience is one of the rarest forms of intelligence a person can possess. The greatest conversation you will ever have is the one you are willing to have with your own mind. Real intelligence is often much quieter than the world expects. It is not about having all the answers or proving that you are smarter than everyone else. It is about having the courage to question your own thinking, admit when you are wrong, and keep growing instead of becoming trapped by old beliefs. That is what makes metacognitive intelligence so rare. A spicy Lady Sigma does not simply react to life. She pauses, reflects, and looks beneath the surface before deciding what something truly means. She understands that the biggest breakthroughs often happen inside the mind long before they appear in the outside world. Every better decision begins with a better way of thinking. If you recognize yourself in these signs, continue developing them. If some of these ideas challenged you, that is even better because growth usually begins where comfort ends. None of us sees ourselves perfectly, but we can all become better at understanding the thoughts, assumptions, and habits that quietly shape our lives. Now, we would love to hear from you. Which of these signs spoke to you the most, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments because your perspective might help someone else see themselves in a completely new way. If you found this video valuable, please share it with someone who enjoys thoughtful conversations and subscribe to join our growing community. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and drop a heartfelt comment down below. Your support means the world to every spicy Lady Sigma on this journey. Thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.